Listen, I need you to do me a favor. We are going to have a great conversation tonight, but I need you to share this experience with family and friends. We all know for the past 13, 14 months, we all been affected and been dealing with COVID-19, and we want to have a real conversation, interactive conversation about this topic. And so with that, we want to know if you're on, we don't know where you're watching from, but we need you to share this and we need you to comment. We are glad that you're here with us, and we hope that this night adds value to your life as we move forward to talk about COVID-19 and how it's been affecting us, and also talk about vaccinations. Should we get the shot? Should we not get the shot? And, you know, people have questions and they have all types of concerns about it, but we want to answer questions tonight. But before we move forward, what we want to do is open up with prayer and hope that and ask that God will bless us tonight as we move forward. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity, and we pray that you will be with us. We pray that you will bless those who are watching, and we pray that you will bless those who will watch this even at a later time. We pray that you'll be with us. Open our ears to hear what you have to say, to allow us to make the best decision about our lives. And we thank you and we give you glory in Jesus' name. Amen. So listen, make sure you share this, make sure you comment, and we want to have a great discussion tonight. At this time, we're going to have Reverend Howard to come now to introduce our presenter.
Good evening. I am the Reverend Jeff Howard. I'm the senior pastor of the New Hope Christian Fellowship Church of West Columbia, and we come to greet you, to Pastor Simeon Mutri, to the leadership and staff, and to you, the entire Brook City Church, and to all those who will be watching tonight. It is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce to some Dr. Bambi Gaddis. It was the social justice forerunner, theologian Howard Thurman who said, "Don't ask what the world needs, find what makes you come alive and go and do it. Because it's what the world needs is for more people to come alive." Dr. Bambi Gaddis has found life in helping those who have felt left out, looked over, to find life again. She is a critical voice for such a time as this. She wouldn't want you to know that she's graduated with high academia accolades. She will want you to know that she is a forerunner and a fighter for those for such a time as this. I present to some and to others, Dr. Bambi Gaddis.
Well, I have to clap since nobody else is in the room. So we're glad to have you. And we're glad to have this conversation tonight about such an important topic. Now, before we get into the conversation, you start presenting. Once again, listen, family, we want you to know that this is interactive. We need you to come and ask questions. We have iPads, we have staff actually on computers, actually monitoring the comment section. So if you have questions, we want you to ask them, and Dr. Gaddis will answer them literally on the spot as I'm looking at it. So make sure that you ask your questions. And so I'm glad that you're here. So I'm going to let you take it, and we're going to ride this out with this rain.
Okay, so let me also say that this is an honor to be here today. We've been on this journey since June of last year. I've been fortunate to work with 6 other faith ambassadors through what is the CoVPN network. We are a small group of individuals who are committed to educating the community about this thing that has taken on a life of its own called COVID. And so since June of last year, we've been working together. This is one of numerous forums we've done. And I'm just grateful to the Brook, my church. Should I be saying that?
You can say that.
For giving us an opportunity to share this evening. And so let me again reiterate, this is supposed to be informal. I do have a presentation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to do just make sure we have some basic information. And so I have this clicker here, and I'm going to be, I'm a transparent person, so this is a new setup for me. Usually I'm sitting in front of my computer, and so the Brook has been gracious enough to help me out in a broader sense. So with that being said, let me move forward. What you're looking at here is just a very brief visual of many of the organizations and the institutions that I've been partnering with over the last year. And again, the COVID-19 Prevention Network is who brings me into this space. Just a couple of disclaimers. First, some of where I'm coming from this evening is really about bridging gaps, intergenerational gaps. We realize that people feel differently based upon where they're coming from. Many of my reflections are real time. When I say real time, I'm talking about what happens when, for the last 27 years, our organization, the Right Wellness Center, has been working in HIV, STDs, prevention. And throughout those years, we've learned so many things and about hard realities of what happens when we are the last to get information. We think of, in public health, they use a term that there's these two extremes. One is laggards and one is early adopters. And what we find out in some communities is that they are more likely to be early adopters in some contexts because they get information sooner. They get access sooner. And so part of our mission is to make sure we get and get it just as early as anyone else so we can make decisions about our lives and our families and the people we love. So, one of the tenets that we've always followed is that as believers, we can't save a soul if we can't save their life. And so part of saving lives is giving information and letting people make their own decisions of what they want to do. And so I'm not here tonight to really tell you what to think, but more so to talk about information that may make folks think maybe a little bit different or maybe become more proactive. So I would ask that people look at this picture, and I'm going to ask you to look at the picture and tell me, what do you see?
I see a parrot.
From a distance, it may look like a parrot, and even if you got a little closer, but if you look real hard, you'll notice that this person has their head wrapped around their head,
Right.
as so.
Right.
And you see how her face is painted, but if you look harder, you see how her arm and her torso meet.
Right.
Her arm is extended on that piece of wood, and her is up near her chest. And then you see her leg draped down. So when you first look at it, it gives you the illusion that it's a parrot, but really what it is a human being painted like a parrot in position.
Wow.
And so one of the premises of what this conversation is about is that a lot of times we think something is one way, when really, if we would look deeper and look harder at it, that some things will manifest themselves to make us think slightly different than what we had. So when we look at Instagram, when we look at Facebook or Twitter or whatever people's favorite social media platform is, there's a lot of opinions out there. But what we say is you got to follow the science, because that's what's going to save our lives. And so that being said, one of the big conversations right now is about African Americans and how they're saying that we are so hesitant, that we are feeling some kind of way, if you will, about this vaccine conversation about COVID. Many of us I have family, not here in South Carolina, but I have family who have dealt with COVID directly. And some of them barely made it out, but by God's grace, they did. But I talk to people every day as we provide COVID testing at the office of people who come in who've lost so many people to them. I was talking with Sam Johnson, who's running for mayor the other day, and he shared with us that he has lost 3 very close family members, grandparents, and I believe an aunt from COVID. And so this is about what is it we need to do to transform our minds so that we get information that's facts-based. And so I don't think it's necessarily that black folks are resistant, that we don't want to protect ourselves. It's that historically, and I'll touch on this briefly, historically we have had cause to question authorities, people that said they had our best interests in mind, but we found out that wasn't true. So part of what I hope we can do is have a straight up conversation about what are some of those things that have given us reason. But now let's move past that, because we cannot continue to lose citizens, and certainly African Americans, at the rate we're losing them.
Yeah, you have people already asking questions online.
Tell me, give me a
You want
clue.
to just jump into it?
Yeah.
Someone says, we have, I believe Siobhan, she says, I had COVID last year, and I heard if I got the shot, I would experience same symptoms, but worse. Is this true or false?
So part of what we're trying to help people process is that, and I'll show you how it works. This vaccine is a synthetic version. Think of it like a bicycle. So if you had a bicycle tire, you had a bicycle handlebar, and you had a bicycle chain, those three things don't equal a bike. You have to have all of the other components in order to make it what it actually is. The vaccine that we're talking about, in this case I'll share about mRNA, which is the Pfizer, the Moderna vaccines. They are synthetic versions, they are replicas. And so when people, part of what we have to overcome is like the flu. People will say, well, I had the flu shot and I got symptoms of the flu. What they're really experiencing is their body responding to the infusion of a foreign body that was put there very specifically and strategically to build their immune system, so that if they come in contact with the flu, they're better able to resist what we know are the real symptoms. Same thing with the vaccine and the mRNAs that I'll show, that we'll talk about. They are synthetic versions of what we call SARS-CoV-2. They've taken pieces of it. It is not the real thing. It does not change your DNA. And when we get those shots, and I've been vaccinated, when we get those shots in our muscles, what it does is the body responds. So yes, the body knows it's foreign. The body says, what is this? And I know, matter of fact, I think I know what it is. So the body automatically thinks it's COVID and begins to develop and to respond to it by setting up antibodies that in fact protect the person. So when they say, I had it, what they recommend is that you should not take the vaccine, depending upon, I would want to know when was she diagnosed?
Okay.
She would want to consult.
She said she had it last year.
She had it last year. So I'm assuming then that she has had a discussion with her physician, and I believe if she had it last year, then most certainly she is now in a position to get the vaccine, because there's a time frame between the time that the physician says that you have recuperated, if you will, to the number of weeks, which is about 9 weeks before you should contemplate getting a vaccine.
Okay, so we have another question from Renee Gal. She said, I received 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine. She said, due to the variants, will or do I need to get a booster injection? And if so, when?
Great question. So to the part about she completed her regimen, I'm assuming 2 weeks afterwards, she's now immunized fully for what Moderna is like 94.1% effective, okay? We don't know whether or not she'll need a booster. That's one of the I don't knows yet.
Okay.
So they're still looking at that. They're still enrolling people in clinical trials, even though they know that Pfizer vaccine is almost 95% effective, that Moderna is 94% effective, assuming they took both shots and they waited 2 weeks after the last shot, the second shot. We still are investigating, is it like the flu? So every year they tell us, get a flu shot, right?
Right.
We don't have enough intelligence yet, but they're looking at it. So they're going to be able to come. We're expecting Pfizer, Moderna, the producers of Moderna, to come back very soon and say, How long does this immunity last? They don't have the answer to that.
So,
right
so
now.
this is almost like buying a new car. So like when you buy a new car and you want to look at the history, there's no history because it's new. So we'll know more next year because after what has happened this year.
Well, take Tesla, for example. I mean, not to brand that, but I
Okay.
mean, people have looked at it as a top of the line car. People think that's a dream car. But in the last several weeks, in one of their vehicles, they found that people that purchased the Tesla where you didn't need the driver, they had several fatalities. Those were things they didn't anticipate nor occurred during the test drive. Does that make sense? So there are things that happen in science. It's just like with J&J. I hear people now saying, well, I don't plan to get J&J because of the 7 cases. What we remind people of is in the clinical trials, there are a lot of advantages to J&J. One, its refrigeration time is totally different than the other 2 vaccines, which means we can get more and store more and keep it longer than we can these other vaccines. Right now, we have vaccines going bad because people aren't getting them in the time frame, and to keep them refrigerated at the levels they have to is an issue. It's one shot. Some people don't want 2 injections. Johnson & Johnson assists them in not having to go through it twice. But what we would encourage people to do is look at, not to minimize what happened to those 7 women, and they were all women, but certainly 7 out of 7 million plus we're looking at probabilities. It was rare. It did not happen during the clinical trials, but now that when they stopped it several weeks ago, they stopped it because they wanted to examine those 7 people. And they're still doing that.
Okay, so you also have someone who says that they had, also is true. Also, is it true if I had COVID already and have antibodies, is the vaccine really necessary?
Yes, based on what we know.
Okay.
Even though you had it already, your body responds and would tell a clinician that you have had it.
Okay.
It's similar to TB or other kinds of infectious diseases where there are, based on your antibody structure, they can tell if you've been exposed. Syphilis is probably another example. Bottom line being, though, the key is, the answer is yes, vaccination, that the individual could benefit from going ahead with the regimen, making a decision about which of the 2 or 3 that they want, and completing the regimen. That's the only way we know to date that they'll have full protection. It's also similar to people who get 1 shot, but say, well, 1 shot is good. Well, the clinical trials say that 2 shots is what is required to get 94 to 95% effectiveness. If you only get 1 shot, then you're only getting 50% of what it has to offer you.
Okay, so you talked about the Pfizer shot and the Moderna shot and the Johnson & Johnson. Some people are asking what went wrong with the Johnson & Johnson shot. Are you able to answer that, or maybe?
I can't say what went wrong.
Okay.
This is how I would respond. If you know someone with diabetes, if you know someone with hypertension, if you know anyone with any other major health disparity where they are required to take medication of whatever sort, there's not a medication on the market that did not go through clinical trial. That is why the FDA has to monitor and ensure that anything they put their stamp of approval on has, based on the clinical trials and the number of people, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people who have taken these medications, and based on their responses. And so to say something went wrong is not necessarily how we see it. How we see it is there were some unique people who had some unique characteristics that when they took the vaccine, they got a certain response. That does not mean that the other 30, 40, 50,000 people, in this case 7 million with Johnson & Johnson, that took the vaccine and had no problems at all, that is still a significant outcome.
Gotcha. And which I think is needed, because so many people have questions about, the vaccination, because I think we're just skeptical of what this really means. I have Adrian asking that. She said, I'm scheduled to get my second vaccine shot next week. I'm having a little anxiety due to all of the side effects I'm reading about outside of prayer, and that we know that works. How else can I prepare for the second shot?
Well, I can only be personal in this case. When I took the first shot, I took a couple Tylenol, got in my car, drove out to the fairgrounds. Second shot, I did the same thing. I don't know if my husband will kill me, but, back in June of last year, when I started doing this work with the COVID-19 network, I was very much interested in being part of the clinical trial. But then I said, my better half said, no, you're not doing that. And I said, okay, so we need to talk. Now, in Colombia, there were no places that I was aware of where I could actually enroll. So I said, okay, I'll table that. I said, but this issue around vaccination, I have to lead by example. I don't want it. I see people dying daily. There's never been a health disparity in this country since the bubonic plague, maybe. I'm sure I'm missing something somewhere, where we've had this number of people pass away so unexpectedly. I don't want to be that. I work in public health. I'm in people's faces. I don't want to place them in a situation where I may be exposed and expose them. So the best thing I can do is first of all, self-preservation, protect myself. So to her question, if she got the first shot, she has 50% immunity. She has an opportunity now to get 94, 95% immunity. Take a couple, certainly she should talk to her physician if she has some concerns. But I strongly believe that it's that second step that we have to take.
So I'm fully vaccinated, and I got the Moderna shot. First shot, I didn't have no problem. My arm was sore a few days, but I sleep on that side, so that's why I was as sore as long as it was. I got my second shot early that morning, that evening around 10 o'clock, out of nowhere. I started having chills, was running a fever, felt a little nausea.
So in 2 or 3 days, how did you feel?
No, the next day I was fine. I got a shot on Wednesday. I was down Wednesday night and Thursday. Friday morning, I woke up and I was fine as if nothing happened.
And that's what the clinical trials show. They show that even among those individuals that get a response, because remember, you're putting a artificial, not the COVID, you're not putting the COVID in your body. You're not putting a substance in the body that impacts your DNA. What they call it mRNA, because the synthetic nature of this vaccine tells the body, it's basically it tricks the body into thinking it's something that it's not. So automatically the body is an ingenious event. So it automatically responds to this foreign body that it thinks is COVID. It creates antibodies. And so I think I need to show them what I'm talking about. So look at it like a landing gear. Okay. So any of us seen a spaceship, we know that in order for it to say it's fully landed on the moon, it has to travel there, but then it has to dig in. And once it digs in, you can't move it until it's ready. So this is, if they look at this, you'll see that this is the vaccine target. So what they see there is that on the left-hand side, let me put on my glasses. The left-hand side shows you the coronavirus. And there is a spike protein that, as you can see, the multicolored little spikes that stick out of it. On the right side, you'll see the human cell. So the whole purpose of that COVID virus is to penetrate the human cell. And so if you look at the next one, so in a regular situation, you would have the spike connecting into the human receptor cell to the right. To the left, you see the coronavirus, the spike protein. It connects to that. And once it connects to that one-on-one, then you will see the passage into the human body. So what happens with the vaccine, once you're protected, the vaccine causes the production of antibodies. It tricks the body into thinking that it's something that it's not. So you'll see those little antibodies, those little tree-like things that are hanging off of it now. Those only are produced upon vaccination. So when the spike protein attempts to infiltrate to the right into that human cell, it can't do it, because now it's a barrier. So that's really physiologically what's happening with that. And so there's 3 benefits of getting vaccinated. One is it reduces your chance of contracting COVID, and it is not a cure. It is not something that that we can say based on clinical trials that you'll never get it. What it says is that if those of us that are vaccinated, if by chance we are exposed and contracted, the likelihood of us having a severe outcome not meaning not that you won't feel ill, now that you may not feel discomfort, but what you won't do is die.
Got it. So we have, I want you to finish your other 2 points, and I ask my other question.
The second is that you'll notice it says a safer way to help build protection. So our bodies, we put all kinds of substances in our bodies. The goal is to get as maximum protection as possible. Those who are unvaccinated do not have maximum protection against COVID. They may eat well, they may follow certain types of regimens, but those regimens do not make them immune. Yes, our immune systems are fortified when we eat well, when we take supplemental vitamins, or we exercise and we do all of these things. But there are some infections that cannot totally be regulated. And I can tell you HIV is one of those. People thought the same thing with HIV, that they could eat a certain way and prevent contracting the virus. That has never been the situation. So the third point is that those who are one of the other benefits is that we're trying to get to what is called herd immunity. And there's a lot of conversation about that. How I define herd community is when people in your immediate circle, when you can move into a space with them and feel some level of comfort that they won't pass something on to you, that's what I'm defining as herd community. There's a lot of conversations about trying to take this whole notion and make it a global issue. We're so far away from herd immunity right now. But how about if we had herd immunity in our home? What if everybody in your house was vaccinated and you could have a family gathering and come together for Thanksgiving and not be pressed? Does that mean you shouldn't wear your mask? Not necessarily. It depends. We know family, we know stuff, but we're a lot more comfortable, right, and could be.
Okay, so some people are asking, do you recommend older teens? I know you have to be 18 or older. I know they're talking or having discussions about a vaccine maybe for the younger population. Do you recommend for older teens and young adults to get the vaccine?
We're having the same conversation that we've talked to parents around the protecting against herpes.
Okay.
Okay. They recommend that teens be vaccinated. Okay. So that HPV. Okay. Moderna and all 3 of the I'll talk about Pfizer, Moderna. Both of them are recommending or have the capacity for 16 years of age and older. Matter of fact, the governor just opened up opportunities for individuals who are 16. I think it's a conversation that should be had with the family. It certainly should be a conversation you have with your physician. We vaccinate our children before they go to school when they're very young. Some people elect not to, and there's concerns about that. But that's, again, a family decision. But certainly, I think the parents, the caregiver, the leader of the family would want to potentially be the first in line so that they're comfortable with the decision they've made, and then talk to their young person about it. Because, I mean, even though we don't want to get in situations where we're forcing people to do it, but educating the young person about the advantage. Because quite frankly, and I tell college students this all the time, and we are having some concerns about 18 to 26-year-olds who are bringing this home. They're bringing it home to their parents, to their grandparents. All you got to do is go to Miami, go to Myrtle Beach on any given weekend. Memorial Day's coming up. So when you have that kind of gathering with too many people who have chosen not to vaccinate, it's a recipe for disaster.
Okay. So I have a question. This touches on some of the things you said prior, but want to ask this because they asked the question. What is the normal time frame to create a vaccine to combat the virus? I'm sorry. And so here's the other part. I've spoken to several people who will not get vaccinated because they feel that the vaccine was developed too quickly.
Okay, so let me just note that the vaccine research that has been going on is not new. It's been going on for decades. As a matter of fact, an African-American woman, it was one of the leading researchers in the development of this vaccine through National Institutes of Health, or NIH. I'm going to use the same example I use with many folks, and I think I may have shared it with you. I would ask them to think about their dream car. You know, what is the car of their dreams? If someone, the last person that told me it was a Land Rover, and I said, well, a Land Rover costs about $150,000, something in that age range. I mean, I can't afford one, but if that's the car I wanted and I had to plan to get that car, I'm certain I might be in my grave before I could just walk into the Land Rover dealer and buy that car. Okay. But what if somebody gave me $150,000 and said, go on down and buy it? I would be there at the drop of a dime. My point is that first, these vaccines have been in development for years.
Okay.
Secondly, when President Trump continued to see the depth of despair and unnecessary death that was happening, he fused millions of dollars into a space that prior to that could not generate the funding to support the research that was being done. That's unheard of. And those of us that work in HIV, we're clamoring for the same kind of investment. When we have that much that many funds infused into research, they were able to bring all the parties to the table, all the greatest minds to the table, all the researchers who had been working on this for decades, but didn't have the adequate resources to get the job done. And so this is not an issue necessarily of them going in a lab and just throwing something together. This has been almost a 20-year event that finally culminated because the resources were placed where they needed to be.
Because 19 on COVID-19 is like the 19th, what is it, addition? What's the proper terminology?
Variation.
Variation of COVID itself. So someone is asking, is it necessary to get tested? Is it necessary to get tested for antibodies before getting vaccinated?
Well, the question is whether or not they think they've been exposed or they actually had it. When you go to get vaccinated, there is a series of questions that they are going to ask you to complete.
Okay.
Whether you've been exposed, whether you actually had it, what is the timeline between the time you were diagnosed and where you are right now in presenting yourself for vaccination. It's very important that people are transparent and honest when they answer those questions. One of the challenges we have in South Carolina is that our state has not decided to expand Medicaid. So we have a lot of people out here who have no insurance. They work every single day. They get up and go to somebody's job, but because of the constraints of ACA, some employers are not required to provide insurance. And so they don't have access. So vaccines are free, but they may have questions like this person has, but they can't ask it because they don't have a health home. So one of the things I certainly would say to any person who's listening is that this is a serious matter that South Carolina has not expanded Medicaid. People that come in our office with no coverage, with no way to treat infection, we're it. And so we encourage folks to, when they are in absence of a physician, they could call organizations like ours and we can answer those questions. Right now, I would say that they should, if they're interested in vaccination, they should present themselves at a Walgreens who's doing it as well for free, or any other location, whether it's the Columbia Mall or any of the other locations, and present themselves, ask that question at the time, and they will tell them very specifically whether they suggest or not suggest that they take it at that time.
Got you. So I want to just pause quickly here. You guys are asking great questions. I just want to remind you, you can still send your questions. You can still ask your questions about anything in regards to COVID-19 and the vaccination. And we're so grateful and honored that we have Dr. Bambi Gaddis with us. Someone is asking, I think the answer to this question is, well, my family members who live with me are fully vaccinated. Can individuals who are partially vaccinated visit my home? And if so, do we still have to wear a mask?
If someone is partially vaccinated, yes, I would certainly encourage masks. One, because it's a mutual reciprocity. If the person is not fully covered, then they are at a potential risk. You don't know where they came from when they entered in. I have some reservations about telling someone you can't come in. I think that I've gotten Ubers lately, and I've asked the Uber driver, "Are you vaccinated?" I've become, I'm not going to use the term paranoid, I've become watchful and caring. Because, I mean, I may not know the person, but if I'm going to step into their environment, I want to make sure I'm covered. So the person who's been partially vaccinated is at far less risk of potential exposure because her family or her circle, their circle, has been vaccinated. Now, they, on the other hand, may have some reservations because they've only been 50% vaccinated, so they may need to wear a mask.
Gotcha. Okay, so you mentioned earlier the percentage of what it does to your immune system to fight COVID. I think you said Johnson & Johnson was, Moderna was 94% or 95% Johnson. I'm sorry, Moderna and Pfizer. Do you know the percentage to Johnson & Johnson? Someone is asking how effective is the one shot from Johnson & Johnson versus Moderna and Pfizer?
I'll be honest, I would have taken Johnson & Johnson if it had been available. Its efficacy is high, as high as 85%. Some people say, well, it's not 95%, it's not 94%. Well, 85% is pretty darn high,
Okay.
especially when you don't have to come back and get another shot. Now, to all three of them, I want to again say that, let me add two things. One, you keep hearing these conversations about covariants or these other strains. In all of them, there was strong evidence that they didn't walk into the clinical trial thinking there was a covariant, but after they went back and looked at their data and looked more deeply, they already had covariants in the process. They just didn't know it until after they really surfaced and people identified what it was. And so they're very effective even in protecting someone against one of the covariant types of infections as well.
Well, I took over your presentation by just going straight to all of the questions. I know we want this to be interactive, but I want to give you room. Is there anything in the presentation you want to make sure that people know about?
Well, there's a couple of things, you know, and I don't know where it is. I mean, part of this is that they tried these vaccines on all different kinds of people. So it wasn't just, they were white, black, Asian, and anything in between, Hispanic communities, Latinx. This is not something they just tried on a few people. This was very clinical. This is, what does it work on different, we talked about that. This is the physician. There's that picture, if they can see her.
Okay.
She is one of the physicians who was part of the early work of COVID vaccine. So Pfizer and Moderna are what we call mRNAs, and vaccines, and I don't need to get into this deeply because at the end of the day, what folks really need to know is that what I showed them in the pictures, the whole purpose is for these, not DNA, but the synthetic version of the, what is in this case, mRNA vaccines. Their whole purpose is to create antibodies so that the body thinks and begins to then respond to the presence of this artificial thing that now protects us against getting the real thing. Those are just pictures of some famous folks, Fauci and who else is in there? I think former President Pence and several other folks who have already been vaccinated with mRNAs. I'm going to go past here. So here's the picture where we talk about how many doses are needed. And so just look at the visual. It just shows you pretty much one dose is 50% and 2 doses is full protection as we know it. It does not mean we will not need to be revaccinated, but we don't have enough information to say when. But one of the things I really want to touch on briefly has to do with our history and our legacy of medical mistrust, and how, although we don't talk about it much, you know, my generation, I'm 65, I went to Tuskegee in undergrad. And one of the unique things that I confronted is, after I started getting in this work and working, is a lot of folks my age heard about the syphilis studies, where although their information is slightly incorrect, which was that the public health service of the government, what they did do was fail to treat. It wasn't that, you know, there's this misnomer that they were injecting men with syphilis and just watching it happen. No, what it was more about was knowing or having someone present with an infection and not treating it so that they could look at it and see how it manifests in your body. So what was totally ironic to me as a Tuskegee grad, which was back in '73, finished in '77, never did they talk about the syphilis studies. Never talked about it. It was like, it was a stigma attached to it. And I didn't really learn about it till I left and went into public health. And so I think that for those of us that remember that, I hear it a lot from our generation. But then we have the younger generation who have conspiracy theories of their own. Theories about they have a tracker. Somehow they're injecting a tracker of some sort. And my response to that is, then you need to give up your phone, because we're all getting tracked. Last time they said, do you want me to pinpoint your location? And so I want to acknowledge that people, that they have reason, not just a historic reason. I mean, right downtown, J. Marion Sims, there's a statue of this man. He was known for the work he did with slaves. He is the father of gynecology, but yet his specimens were black African women who, without anesthesia, had to succumb to all kinds of physical violations with no way to remedy the pain. But yet we don't know that, and we don't talk about it. But for those of us that know it, somehow that impacts us. More recently, we can't just focus on Tuskegee, because right now in real time, we have folks that walk into a hospital and are treated poorly, or they are provided some level of care and they tell their physician, this isn't working for me, or I feel pain, and they ignore their pain. And all of these real-time, contemporary forms of disregarding people's perceptions of their own bodies. We know our bodies better than anyone. We know when we're in pain. And the research has shown over and over again that African Americans, unfortunately, have had too many situations where we have said we're in pain, but yet it was not remedied. And so I get it, but this is an opportunity for us to take charge as a community, to take charge as a family, and to protect ourselves, because this virus doesn't care.
So you have some young people who say, you know, normally when you're younger, you're more vibrant, you're healthier, you know, you can move about and you're good. Then you get older, you know, as you age, and you realize, wait a minute, I need to make sure I have some insurance, and, you know, my back is hurting, and, you know, your body is acting different. So how do we encourage younger people, that young adult, that 22, that 23-year-old, that 27-year-old individual who says, I don't need that, I'm fine, and if I do get it, I can bounce back? Because I think within the younger demographic, we're seeing that they're not thinking that it's necessary or needful.
Well, part of it is whether or not we're able to have a conversation about that moves beyond themselves. You know, who do you love? Is there anybody okay, if you don't care whether you get it, is there anybody that you care about and love that it would devastate you if you brought it home? Is it your mother, your father, your auntie, your grandma? I mean, I can't, and this isn't a guilt trip. We can't have a guilt trip conversation. But inevitably the question is, who do you care about other than yourself? Two, I mean, there are folks that even when we present that as an option, that may not be a motivating factor. So, I mean, let's just get real. You just don't ever plan to turn up again, do you? You don't plan to go to a concert. You don't plan to, you don't think that there are going to be restrictions. And I've been looking as a nonprofit director and as a person that provides healthcare services, I'm looking at all the legal statutes now about what are my rights as a organization, what should be realistic expectations about the people that work for me, and whether or not they potentially place clients in jeopardy because they, for whatever reason, feel that they don't need to be vaccinated. When COVID first came out, we had no PPE. We had nothing. I had to write grants to get funding. Thank God for 1SC Elton John and AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I mean, that is how we were able to protect ourselves. That is how we were able to stay open. But there's going to come a time when your employer is going to have some expectation that you be vaccinated. There will be jobs that you will not qualify for.
Wow.
Eventually, unless, they talk about this COVID-19 passport. I mean, some of this stuff is not new. We watch TV, we watch sci-fi, we watch all these things that back in the day we said, oh my gosh, that would never happen. And here we are. People are talking on their wrists, on their phones, and all kinds of innovation. There is going to come a time when we are going to, as a society of workers, for as long as we work, so I say to young people, get ready. Get ready for the day when your employer tells you that that is something you really want to consider if you want to increase your rank, if you want to get mobile. And be quite frank, I'm not sure, and I don't, I am really hard pressed to say that I should feel comfortable sending one of my staff out to travel across country on behalf of the agency, and they're not protected. And these are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about, that we're thinking about. And I have a lot of young folks that work for me. And they're all vaccinated. And some were resistant and some were hesitant. But after getting educated, they came back and said, Dr. Gaddis, I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I'm like, yeah, power to the people. Handle it. Because I want them to grow and I want them to have some freedom. And freedom means that we have to protect ourselves.
I have one more question. This is the big question. This is probably the most impactful question I will ever ask during this time. How do we help the people who are afraid of needles get this shot? Because we have a lot of people who won't get it just because of the needle. But it was quick to me. I didn't even feel it.
I know this,
Such a big question.
No, it's a real question, but I look at it like, I think and I'm being personal, there's three things I don't play with: hair, teeth, and feet. Okay, those are three critical things that you got to have, right? I put a lot of energy into it. I make sacrifices. We all know what dental care costs. We make sacrifices for the better good. I don't see myself as a 70-year-old toothless woman. You know what I'm saying? So what I think about is what steps do I have to take to avoid the potential outcome? Being bald, not having teeth, or being crippled. I understand the needle thing. I do. But I also know folks whose whole life has been transformed because they no longer have teeth because they were afraid to go to the dentist and have work done. I get it. But when I have to think about the choice between life and death and feeling ill or just being down, but knowing that the chances that I'm going to get back up are real, I just, I would say, I can't tell you what to think. I can't tell you what to do. But life, right now, as we have it, is all, it's a gift. And there's so much for us to experience out here, to it all to come down to that needle. That needle will be so fast in your arm, you will be out and gone. I just, and I can only speak from real-time experience of, I believe in life. God gives us life. And he tells us that we should be about treasuring it. Even whatever frailties we have, whatever weaknesses we have, whatever bad habits we have, whatever, things we eat that we shouldn't eat, or whatever the case may be, he still gives us an opportunity to make choices every single day. And so I am committed. I've been told off and everything, but it's okay because life is everything for as long as you have it. And it should be full, it should be healthy. And anybody that's ever been ill knows there's nothing like good health. And if this will help avoid, you know, the man that spent 300, he said he just got out 365 days in the hospital, lost 160 pounds. God's grace and mercy, he got out, but he's got a long way to go. And we haven't talked about, in closure, the aftermath. You know, the foggy thinking, the neuropathy of the feet, the lack of energy. My sister, I think my sister, she don't mind me sharing, she had it before they even knew what it was. She said it took her almost a year to get her full respiration back. And she's a Peloton kind of chick, you know. and just listening to her talk about how long it took her body to recuperate after COVID. So it's not just the here and the now, it's the aftermath that we're trying to prevent. And that affects you, your family, and anyone who loves you. So, you know, I'm committed, our agency's committed to trying to circumvent people's pain by sharing information that we hope they'll listen to and protect themselves and their family.
Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time out to doing this. I think it was extremely needful. We've had a great audience on Facebook and online and on YouTube, and you just answering the questions to so many people. I really appreciate that, and I hope that we take heed to what you're saying. Of course, everyone has to make their decision.
Well, they can get tested. If they want COVID testing, we offer testing for free at Right Wellness Center at 1731 Laurel Street.
Okay.
And they can get tested at our other site, which we moved into today at 1022 Calhoun. It's free of charge. We can give them any information they want. Or go to our website or call me, you know, call us. We'll be more than happy to direct them to where they need to be.
Well, thank you again. We'll make sure we'll repost those addresses there. We also have COVID testing here as well. So if 8328 Park Lane Road. So anyway, you can get tested. And I do know they have the vaccination.
What are your hours?
Our hours is, I think it's from 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday.
Okay.
And, you know, don't quote me on that. We have other staff members who know that better than I do. But I do know it's Monday through Saturday. So
we can send people over here?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And, of course, we know they're doing or giving the Pfizer shot at Columbia Place Mall. They're still doing that. So we just want to encourage everyone to just take this information, apply it, consider what your future looks like, your family members, and everyone who you come in contact with, because we want to make sure that we are doing the best, making the best decision now and later. So we want to say thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for asking your questions. And we pray that you have a wonderful evening. And Dr. Gaddis, thank you again.
For letting me come.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Have a good night.